Hi there, I'm Lorraine, and I thought owning a quiet cabin in the mountains would finally give me peace. But when my mother decided it was hers to loan out to her friends for profit, and my sisters backed her up, I realized I was fighting more than just betrayal. I was fighting years of being unseen. What happens when family crosses every line you set? Have you ever had to stand alone against your own family? What time are you listening to this, and where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if this hits home for you, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The phone rang while I was watering my succulents on the kitchen windowsill, the late afternoon sun casting a honeyed glow across the tiles. I wiped my hands on my jeans and picked up. "Hi, honey." My mother's voice chimed through the line, too sweet, too casual. I was thinking, my friends are dying to get away for a weekend, and your cabin would be perfect. Wouldn't it be wonderful to let them use it? I blinked at the faucet still running, feeling a cold knot tighten in my chest. "The cabin's not really set up for guests right now, Mom," I said carefully, my voice steady even though my pulse quickened. "It's not a rental." "Oh, don't be difficult," she laughed, brushing away my concern like dust from a windowsill. "They'll take such good care of it. Besides, it's just sitting there, isn't it?" I pressed my lips together, the words tangling on my tongue. I didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. I just stood there, listening to her hum about logistics, feeling smaller with each word. By the time I hung up, the air in the kitchen felt heavier, like something irreversible had already been set in motion. 2 days later, uneasy and restless, I drove up to Truckee. The familiar winding road into the hills usually soothed me, but today every turn twisted tighter inside my chest. When I reached the driveway, my heart stopped. Cars lined the dirt path like parade floats. Laughter drifted on the breeze, shrill and careless. I pulled over to the side, killing the engine. From behind a cluster of pines, I could see them, strangers, lounging on the porch, holding plastic cups, snapping pictures like it was their private Airbnb. My cabin, my sanctuary, the place I bought with years of scraped-together savings, endless overtime hours, skipped vacations. I sat frozen, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. No one had even thought to tell me. They hadn't even waited for my answer. The sun dipped lower, staining the sky burnt orange. I stepped out of the car, my boots crunching softly against the gravel. I didn't walk up to the house. I stood at the edge of the clearing, unseen, a ghost at my own wake. A woman I didn't recognize laughed loudly, swinging open the front door like it belonged to her. Someone else started a fire in the pit I had dug myself one cold spring. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the ease with which they erased me. I closed my eyes, and just like that, the memories flooded in. Birthdays, where Donna got the new bike, and I got a hand-me-down. Christmases, when Penny's every wish list was granted, and I unwrapped polite apologies. Mom's smile when she needed me, her frown when I needed her. It was always about appearances, always about the family looking good from the outside, no matter what it cost inside. I inhaled the sharp scent of pine, the distant whiff of charcoal smoke. Without a word, without making a scene, I turned back to my car. Driving down the mountain, the sky bleeding into twilight, something shifted inside me, quietly but irrevocably. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. This was a crack running deep through the foundation of everything I had tried so hard to believe was solid. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, feeling a spark ignite deep in my chest. A part of me, the part they had spent decades training to be quiet, stirred awake. And it wasn't going back to sleep. The first thing I saw when I woke up was the blinking light of my phone. Dozens of notifications waiting to ambush me before I could even swing my legs out of bed. I rubbed my eyes, opened the screen, and felt my stomach drop straight through the mattress. Photos, smiling faces, laughter frozen mid-snap. My cabin. In every frame, strangers lounged on my deck chairs, sipped wine by my fire pit, posed inside the living room I had decorated with my own hands. Each caption hurt more than the last. "Thank you, Lorraine, for your generosity. We are so blessed to have such a giving friend of the family." I scrolled, numb fingers tapping endlessly. I hadn't said yes. I hadn't even said maybe. I stumbled into the kitchen, the hardwood cold under my bare feet. I called my mother's number with trembling hands. It rang once, twice, straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again, Each time it cut off, a sharp, sterile click in my ear, like a door slammed against my protests. I dropped the phone on the counter and leaned heavily on the edge of the sink. My reflection in the window above looked smaller somehow, like I had shrunk overnight. I thought about posting a correction about telling the truth, but what would that even look like? Actually, I never agreed to this. Against a chorus of cheerful thanks, I'd sound petty, mean-spirited. I reported the photos one by one, but the damage was done. Some colleagues had already liked them, friends had commented. Lorraine, the generous daughter, Lorraine, the magnanimous host. I wasn't just erased, I was rewritten. The brunch was the final twist of the knife. Mom organized it last minute, typical, and guilted me into coming because everyone's already asking about you, honey. I showed up wearing my best fake smile, the kind I kept stored like an emergency kit for family events. The house buzzed with laughter and the smell of baked ziti. Women in pastel cardigans sipped mimosas. Men slapped each other on the back, shouting over the football game. I hovered at the edges, feeling like a paper doll propped up for display. Then, over the clink of forks and the low hum of conversation, Mom stood and tapped her glass with a spoon. "I just want to say how proud I am," she beamed. "Our family cabin is officially open to all of you whenever you need it." Lorraine insisted, "Didn't you, sweetie?" Every head turned toward me. I froze, smile locked painfully in place. The room blurred. It wasn't just the wine or the heat. It was the way my mother said it, so casual, so final, like my consent was never needed, only my compliance. I nodded once, a stiff jerk of the chin. The applause drowned out the roaring in my ears. Later, in the parking lot, I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. If they saw the cabin as communal property, a family trophy to be passed around and paraded, maybe it was time I reminded them what family really meant, and what happened when you pushed the wrong daughter too far. The driveway was already full when I pulled into the cabin that Sunday. Cars packed tightly along the dirt road, dust hanging lazy in the air. I parked far down the hill and made the walk up, my heels sinking into the dry ground. Inside, the place buzzed with energy, a soft symphony of polite laughter and the clinking of glasses. I barely stepped through the door before Mom swooped in, her hand light on my elbow, her smile strained at the edges. "Sweetheart," she whispered brightly, loud enough for a few nearby guests to hear. "Could you handle the sign-in table, greet everyone, hand out the flyers about the cabin? You're the best person to represent us." Us. Not me. Us. I blinked at her, my mouth drying out, but the current of expectation was already dragging me along. Smiling strangers, raised glasses, friendly nods. I couldn't make a scene. I found myself standing behind the folding table, forcing my lips into a brittle curve, stacking brochures that advertised the Ridgeway Family Retreat, a cabin that belonged to me and yet somehow didn't anymore. The hours blurred. Smile, nod, shake hands, pretend this was normal. When Donna and Penny glided up to the table, I almost didn't register the thick manila folder Donna held. Penny leaned in close, her perfume cloying, her voice low. "We thought it'd be good to make things official, you know? Just to avoid future confusion." Donna opened the folder with a flourish, pulling out a document thick with legalese. "Just a quick signature," she chirped, "to confirm that the cabin is equally split among the family, for Mom's peace of mind, really." The words blurred on the page, but the intent was crystal clear. I was being erased, one signature at a time. I stared at them, the room humming like a beehive around us. Their smiles stayed plastered in place, brittle and bright, while their eyes glinted with something cold and certain. The trap had been set long before I stepped onto that porch. I took the papers numbly, my fingers trembling only slightly. I made it through the event, made it through the congratulations and the claps on the back, made it through the syrupy thanks for being such a team player. It wasn't until the sun started to dip behind the pines that I slipped away. Out the back deck, the manila folder pressed against my chest like a shield. I sat down heavily on the edge of the porch, the wood still warm from the day's sun. My heart pounded against my ribs, my breath shallow. I thought of every time I had swallowed the lump in my throat growing up. Every time I had smiled through being overlooked, dismissed, rearranged to fit someone else's version of family. I unfolded the papers. The ink gleamed under the dying light, a contract of surrender dressed up in pretty words. I folded the papers neatly, walked back inside, and set them gently on the table. I didn't say a word. As I drove away, the sky bleeding into deep blue, the mountains stood sharp against the horizon. They thought I had no choice. They were wrong. The envelope was thick, heavy in my hand as I pulled it from the mailbox. No return address, just my name, spelled out in careful, formal script. I stood on my front porch in the fading evening light, the cicadas humming in the distance, my thumb working unconsciously at the sealed flap. Inside was a letter from a law office I'd heard my family mention before, a family friend turned family weapon. The words blurred and sharpened as I read. Implied obligations, shared ownership, the importance of maintaining family unity. No signatures yet, no official filings, just pressure. Just enough legal jargon to sink teeth into my nerves and shake them loose. I sat down on the porch steps, the wood still warm against my jeans, and stared at the skyline. They were trying to make it real, make the theft official. My phone buzzed on the step beside me, a text from Penny popping up like a wasp's sting. Hope you're not taking this personally. We're all just trying to make things fair. Fair. I didn't respond. I didn't trust my fingers not to break the screen. Instead, I threw the letter onto the passenger seat and drove north. The road to Truckee wound familiar and cruel under my tires. Night had fallen by the time I pulled up to the cabin. The porch light was off. Silence pressed heavy against the pines. I punched in the door code, the numbers stiff under my fingertips. Nothing. I tried again, slower, careful. The keypad flashed red, access denied. A hollow laugh burst out of me, sharp and brittle in the quiet. I called Mom, straight to voicemail. I texted. No reply. I stood there under the stars, my own home locked away from me like a mistake to be hidden. I leaned against the hood of my car, the metal cold and unforgiving. Above me, the night stretched endless and empty. I thought about all the times growing up when I found doors closed to me, literal and otherwise. When birthday parties happened without me because I was too serious. When plans were made without my input because you wouldn't have wanted to come anyway. When decisions were explained after the fact, with a smile and a pat on the head. It had never been about inclusion, it had always been about control. The cabin wasn't just wood and nails, it was the first thing I had built entirely for myself. No compromises, no apologies, and they were trying to steal that too. I straightened up, my spine stiff against the weight of it all. They wanted a fight. They were about to learn I was done playing the quiet daughter. It started with a casual text at work. A coworker, someone I barely chatted with beyond polite hallway smiles, messaged me out of the blue. Hey Lorraine, thanks again for letting the Johnsons use your cabin this weekend. Looks amazing. My stomach dropped. I stared at the words, willing them to rearrange themselves into something less damning, less impossible. I hadn't authorized anyone. I hadn't even told anyone I wasn't using the cabin. Hands clammy, I pulled up my social media. The photos hit harder than any punch. Smiling strangers lounged across my living room couch, the couch I had agonized over choosing. Children splashed in the small pond near the deck, their laughter caught midair. A group of women grilled burgers on my patio, one even wearing the apron I had left folded neatly in a kitchen drawer. Every corner of my private refuge paraded out like a public park. And there, in one tagged post, a comment thread that made my blood run cold. Big thanks to Penny for setting this up. So easy once she sent us the code. Code, the lock code. The one that had been changed without my knowledge. The pit in my stomach hardened into something heavier, something angrier. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and drove. The highway blurred past me in muted smears of green and gold. My jaw ached from clenching my teeth. When I pulled up to the cabin, my worst fears solidified into sick reality. Cars packed the driveway, cheap rental stickers glinting under the afternoon sun. Laughter floated down the hill, an ugly contrast to the rage simmering in my chest. I didn't go in. I didn't want to see more than I already had. From behind the cover of the trees, I watched. Strangers. Touching my books, my throw pillows, clinking their bottles against the deck railing I had sanded by hand. It wasn't just disrespect, it was invasion. It was theft masked in cheerful entitlement. I raised my phone, hands steady now, and began documenting everything. License plates, faces, voices. Piece by piece, I gathered the ammunition I would need. This time, they wouldn't get away with it. This time, I wasn't going to be the quiet one they steamrolled. Not anymore. The smell hit me first. A sour mix of spilled beer, burnt meat, and something sharp like mildew. I pushed open the cabin door with the side of my hip, already bracing for what I didn't want to see. The living room looked like a frat party had crashed through and left their regrets behind. One of the armchairs, my grandmother's, was split open, its stuffing clawed out like a gutted animal. Deep stains marred the woven rug I had found at a little market years ago, the one I spent a whole Saturday cleaning and beating free of dust. Glass from a broken frame crunched under my shoes. Everywhere I looked, there was damage, chaos, disrespect written into every overturned cushion, every greasy fingerprint smeared across the windows, and standing right in the middle of it all, like the cherry on top of this rotting sundae, was my mother, arms crossed, face tight with disapproval. "I can't believe you let it get like this," she said. "You should have been monitoring who uses it." I stared at her, words folding and refolding inside my mouth, none sharp enough to cut through the disbelief. "They were your guests," I managed finally, my voice raw. "Your friends?" She shrugged like it was weather, like it was inevitable, like none of it had anything to do with her. "If Donna had managed this, it wouldn't have happened," she said. "Maybe you're just not responsible enough." The words didn't hit like bullets, they hit like bruises, deep, old, ugly. I turned away before she could see the heat prickling behind my eyes. I drove back to Sacramento in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly I thought the leather might tear. The messages started before I even made it home. Ping, 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 each buzz another blow. "Donna always thinks ahead. Penny knows how to prioritize family. Maybe you're just too independent for your own good." The guilt dripped into my phone like acid, burning small invisible holes straight through me. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my throat was tight with unspoken screams. I didn't bother with dinner. Didn't bother with changing out of the same dusty clothes that now smelled like cheap beer and betrayal. I sat at the kitchen table, the blue light of my phone illuminating the tired lines on my face reflected in the dark window. I reread the messages, each one another stitch in the heavy tapestry of blame they were weaving around me. Tears welled, hot and traitorous, blurring the screen until the words turned to smudges. But this time I didn't let them fall. I wiped my face with the heel of my hand, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. The lawyer's email draft stared back at me from last week. Unfinished, unsent. My finger hovered over the send button. I could still hear my mother's voice in my head, silky and sharp, urging me to be the bigger person, to let it go. But another voice, one that sounded a lot like my own, older and angrier and harder, rose louder. "Enough." I pressed send without another thought out. The first buzz of my phone woke me, slicing through the stillness of my living room. Then another, and another. I sat up on the couch, blanket pooling around my waist, the TV long since gone to static. The family group chat was exploding. I clicked it open without thinking, still half dazed from sleep. And the words hit me like a blow to the chest. Lorraine has no respect for what this family built. She's selfish. She's forgotten where she comes from. Post after post, message after message, not from strangers this time, but from blood. My mother, my sisters, even cousins I barely spoke to anymore, adding their poisoned 2 cents. Each message layered on top of the last until the thread blurred into one long accusation. I was the villain. I was the betrayal. I stared at the screen, my coffee table, the walls, the soft hum of the fridge behind me. The betrayal didn't even sting anymore. It burned out the inside of me, leaving something hollow and sharp-edged in its place. I didn't respond. I turned the phone face down on the couch, stood up, and got dressed, because I already knew what was coming next. The BBQ was at Donna's house, a casual get-together, a celebration, Mom had called it on the family calendar. When I arrived, the backyard was strung with twinkle lights, cheap wine sweating on folding tables, kids darting between adults with faces sticky from cake. Donna stood near the grill, hair perfect, flipping burgers like she was hosting a charity gala. Penny waved me over with a too-wide smile. I felt every pair of eyes track me as I crossed the yard. Mom tapped a plastic fork against her wine glass. "Everyone," she called out, "I have some wonderful news to share." The chatter dimmed. I knew before she said it. "We've decided," Mom said brightly, That the family cabin will be officially inherited by Donna. She's shown such commitment to keeping it part of the family spirit. Applause, smiles, fake cheers that echoed in my ears like the ocean roaring in a conch shell. I stood there, frozen in the sticky July heat, while Donna beamed and people clapped her on the back as if she had won something, earned something, as if I hadn't bled for that place, as if I hadn't poured every hour of my second job, every skipped vacation, every prayer for something that was mine into those walls. I left without speaking. In the safety of my car, I sat with my forehead pressed against the steering wheel, breathing shallowly. It wasn't grief anymore. It wasn't even rage. It was something colder, cleaner. They had made it public. Now it was my turn. I started the engine, the dashboard lights flickering on like an omen. Driving toward Truckee, the mountains rising ahead like old gods, I whispered into the darkness, "You declared it publicly. Now watch me respond privately." The laughter floated around the edges of the neighborhood block party, thick with the scent of barbecued meat and overripe roses. I moved quietly among the mingling bodies, plastic cup in hand, the sun sinking low enough to throw long shadows across the lawn. I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard anyway. "She doesn't even need it, you know," one woman whispered, her voice sticky with fake sympathy. "Her husband's loaded. She's just being greedy." "She's always been a bit distant from the family," another added, clucking her tongue. "Never really one of us." Donna's name wasn't mentioned. It didn't have to be. The words hit harder than I expected, bruising in their casual cruelty. It wasn't just that they were talking. It was that someone had fed them the script. Donna. A story rewritten again, this time painting me as the villain who hoarded what should have been shared, should have been gifted like some benevolent queen. I left the party early, my skin prickling under every glance that followed me. The phone call came just as I was pulling into my driveway. Penny's number blinked on the screen, bright and insistent. I answered against my better judgment. "Hey, sis." Penny's voice was syrupy sweet, but underneath it, a blade gleamed. "I just wanted to say, Mom's not doing well. The stress over all this, it's affecting her heart." I stayed silent, staring through the windshield at my porch light flickering in the wind. "I mean, God forbid something happens," she continued, her tone tightening. It would break her if this fight keeps going." My jaw clenched so hard it ached. "You know what you need to do," she said, almost a whisper. "For her." I hung up without replying. I sat there for a long moment, breathing shallowly. Then I went inside. The anonymous email was waiting. A tip, a warning, a mercy. "Your cabin is listed. Under a fake owner's name. Private sale. Cash preferred." I clicked the link, my hand steady in a way that felt almost surreal. There it was. Photos of my cabin, my walls, my floors, my memories, paraded across a real estate listing as if they were up for grabs. The bile rose fast and hot, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't family drama. This was theft. This was betrayal made permanent, public, unapologetic. I opened my laptop, fingers moving with an icy precision. I pulled up my lawyer's contact, typed 3 words into the subject line: "Initiate immediate action. No more warnings." The pen felt heavier than it should have. I sat across from my lawyer, the thick stack of documents between us, a tangible wall separating the life I had endured from the life I was choosing now. She slid the papers toward me, her smile kind but firm. I didn't need encouragement. I signed. Every flick of the pen carved a line between me and the people who had mistaken my silence for surrender. By the time I pressed the final signature down, something in my chest loosened. Not relief exactly, not joy, something quieter, steadier, resolution. The cabin was mine. Not just legally, but emotionally, spiritually, untouchable now. My phone buzzed while I was walking to my car. Texts trickled in like ghosts from a house I no longer lived in. Donna's terse, "Hope you're happy." Penny's passive-aggressive, "Guess you got what you wanted." Even Mom's attempt at guilt, thin and whimpering, "You've broken this family." I didn't reply. Silence was my answer. I let the messages fade into the static of the past as I drove north, the road unfolding like a ribbon toward something new. When I reached the cabin, I found Clark already there, unloading paint cans and brushes from the truck bed. He didn't say much, he never did when it mattered most, but he squeezed my hand as he handed me a roller. We worked side by side for hours, covering old scratches with fresh paint, mending torn screens, scrubbing away stains that would have once made my heart ache. Now they were just blemishes on a canvas that was still mine to reclaim. At one point, as I was sewing a new set of curtains, a low laugh slipped out of me. It startled Clark enough that he looked up from tightening the deck rail. "What's funny?" he asked. I held up the crooked seam I had just stitched. "It's not perfect," I said, "but it's mine." He smiled and went back to work, and I let the moment settle into my bones. Later, as the sky turned a smoky lavender and the first stars blinked awake, I carried a cup of coffee out to the porch. The wood creaked under my bare feet, familiar and forgiving. I sat there watching the dark blue line of the mountains cut against the bruised sky, the mug warm between my palms. Some wounds don't close clean. Some stay raw underneath no matter how much time passes. But you can build a life around them, a strong, stubborn life that doesn't hide its scars but wears them like a road map. The cabin, the silence, the wide open sky, they were all mine now. I closed my eyes and felt the wind brush across my face, soft and certain. For the first time in months, I smiled. Some battles you win not by fighting but by walking away. Sometimes the hardest battles we face are the ones no one else sees, the quiet wars for our own dignity, peace, and self-worth. Walking away from people you love can feel like breaking yourself in half, but sometimes it's the only way to become whole. This journey taught me that protecting what you build, protecting who you are, isn't selfish, it's necessary. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's an act of survival. In the end, silence became my strength and solitude became my sanctuary. What about you? Have you ever had to choose yourself over keeping the peace? I would love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and let's share our journeys. Tell me where you're watching from, and if this story touched your heart, comment with a 1-inch or share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video and it resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel so you won't miss the next chapter in our stories. Your support means everything. See you soon.